This is Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polacek. Our special guest for this week's episode is my daughter, my eldest child, Anna Polacek, Anna Krinian Polacek, or as her brothers like to call her, Anna Onion Polacek. Anna is currently a soon-to-be graduating senior from Temple University. She is in the Temple University School of, can you please say it because I always get the initials wrong?
Film and Media Arts.
Temple School of Film and Media Arts, right? TFMA.
Yes.
I'm going to brag. Anna has a 4.0 GPA at Temple, never gotten a B in her life. Well, although this semester isn't over, I suppose.
I was going to say, we'll see what happens.
But she's been studying film at Temple. Her concentration is screenwriting. She has been working very hard, particularly the last year seems like a lot of craziness, and it just completed principal photography on a student film that she wrote and co-directed with another Temple student. They are currently in post-production, hopefully going to be editing, putting everything together, and then submitting the film, which is called Mirame, to Temple University's annual Diamond Screen Film Festival. So we have high hopes that she'll get some recognition from that. I can't wait to see it. I've heard lots about the travails, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about that today. Anna also is an artist, and she works as a commission-based freelance illustrator. She focuses on portrait illustration and character design. You can find her on Instagram at Skyline Orange. That's a good place to find her work, and also a good place to request commissions. She's very upfront about the amount of time it may take sometimes to do the work that she has, but I'm a proud owner of many Anna Polacek originals and would recommend it highly. We're here to talk about kind of film and music together. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So first off, your topic, your suggestion for our playlist was the hardest one I've done yet. So thank you for that. Tom probably knows about it, but can you give me a quick overview of what your film Mirame is about?
It's about this girl. It's called Mirame. And the main character's name is Mira because I am incredible at coming up with puns. And it's about Mira. She's like a great server. She just works at this sort of bar. Like she works at kind of a dive bar-esque place. She's good at her job. You get to see her like in her element, kind of dealing with like sort of seedy, gross customers, but she's like really good at dealing with them. Until this guy, one of her coworkers comes up to her and tells her that this guy is requesting her specifically. And Mira's like, is this like a guy that I know? Do you see him a lot? And the other server's like, no, I've never seen him before in my life. And it ends up that this guy who's requesting her is like a former high school teacher of her. And he's requesting her specifically to be her server. And Mira kind of just freaks out and doesn't know how to handle it. And that's like the main focus of the film. It's not very long. It was only a 9-page script, but right now, according to my editor, Julian, I think that we're about 10 minutes without credits. So that's how long it is right now. But it's looking really great. I've gotten the rough cuts back from my editor, Julian, and like they already look like I was just requesting assembly cuts and they're already like in a rough cut stage. Like we probably only need a few more revisions before we have like picture lock, I would say. And then we just have to do sound design and all of that, which is something that I know very little about. And we are currently working with my co-director's friend, my co-director Lainey Mackin, who is a Temple directing BFA student. A friend of Lainey's works does like film scoring. So we're paying Lainey's friend, her name is Carolina, to do film scoring for us. And basically I sent Carolina a playlist of all the music I listened to when I was writing it. And I was like, this is the kind of vibe that I see. We sent her like the mood board of like the kind of visual style that we're going for, along with the actual clips and stuff from the film, the rough cuts that we had so far. And so that is the process that we're in. And I'm currently looking for someone to do color grading because I don't know how to do that. And that is my current stressor, is finding someone to color grade.
So it really seems to me though that with all these things that you don't have a solid grasp on, you're finding people who do. And
Yeah.
how much are you learning from them when you go through the process?
I would say a lot. I would say maybe even less learning about what to do in situations and more so just learning how much I don't know. And on our pickup day, because initially we had planned to shoot all in one weekend, but unforeseen circumstances meant that we had to do a pickup day, which happened in a month later, literally a month after our initial shoot. Because of some like really awful unforeseen circumstances with the pickup day, our director of photography, Jalen Brown, who is like absolutely awesome, Jalen was unable to be there to be the director of photography, so we had to find last minute another person to stand in for her and like execute the shot list that she had put together. And I just felt so bad because the girl who stepped in, her name is Juliana. She was absolutely amazing, like absolutely an incredible person. We are all like indebted to her for stepping in this way. But she would ask me questions and they were just stuff that I did not know the answers to. And I was like, let me text Jalen really quick and hope that she gets back to me because I don't know. She was like asking what kind of lens Jalen was using and how close of a lens that we wanted and all this stuff. And I only have a very, very basic understanding of that kind of thing. And I was like, yeah,
Well,
can we have a shorter lens? I don't know what that means per se.
and part of that's just because you only have a limited number of classes every semester, right? I mean, if your
Yeah, and
concentration is screenwriting, for example, you're probably not focusing on lenses.
Yeah. And that is something I will critique Temple's film program for. I won't critique them about me personally not knowing about cameras. What I will critique them for is that if you're in the screenwriting concentration, you do not interact with any of the other like BFA concentrations, which I think is a genuine downfall of the like I think that that is my huge critique of the program. I tell anyone and everyone who will listen to me that I think it's a very poor educational decision to do it that way, because the way that Temple's program works is that the BFA students, so the screenwriting concentration, no, the directing concentration, the cinematography concentration, and the editing concentration, they all work together in the senior year to create the senior theses. So the directors all write their script junior year, then they put together their pitch documents, and then the producer, and the producing concentration. And so the producing concentration, the directing concentration, the cinematography concentration, and the editing concentration all have to pitch their projects. Like the directors have to pitch their projects, and all of the other people have to pitch themselves to the directors. And then all of those concentration students all have to list like a list of 3, the order of the top people that they would want to work with. And then the department pairs them all together, and then they put together a team, and then they give them $2,000. And that's how the senior theses get made. Notice how I mentioned nothing about the screenwriting concentration people,
Right.
because they're not involved at all. All of those concentrations happen at the same time, like the same classes. So like basically you do not, if you're a screenwriting concentration major, you will not interact with any of these other students. And I am only very lucky that I am very close with a lot of them. And part of the reason that I'm close with a lot of them is because there was an overflow of a class one time, and basically like they couldn't have all the screenwriting concentration people and all the directing concentration people in one class. They had to split them up, and I volunteered to go to the directing concentration instead. And to this day, that's actually where I wrote Mirame, I wrote it in that class. And to this day, I'm like so thankful that I did that.
So what you just described then, is that one of the reasons that you decided to make your own film?
Yeah, because I don't have a portfolio. And if I'm being honest, none of the screenwriting concentration people have a portfolio of like, they have what they've written, but they don't have like, I didn't like the idea of leaving college without like a film that I could show that I wrote, made, and did. Like, I didn't like that. If it was up to me, I think that the director should be paired with screenwriters, even if it's not the screenwriter's exact film. I think that the screenwriter should be involved. I think that they should work as sort of like a script editor to the director. Because I mean, there's really, really talented people in the screenwriting concentration, and I don't think that they really necessarily get their flowers. And I think that it would really benefit a lot of these directors to have to work with a screenwriter just to see what that would be like.
Yeah, that's obviously a bit of a critique that maybe you should talk with the department heads as you leave. But what would you say you enjoyed the most about being in film school in general?
I think that getting to work with other people and getting to see like, because when you're in your own head all the time and
Which
you're
you
thinking of
are.
your own, yes, you think of your own ideas all the time, every single day. And you get used to your own ideas and you get used to your own way of doing things. I think that I said this to my roommate Sophie yesterday when we were talking about my senior my the feature that I'm writing for my senior thesis. I said that you kind of have to be an egomaniac a little bit to do anything art related and like pursue it at like a college level and then pursue it after a college level. And because of that, like any person that's doing art, you have to have a little bit of a nauseating sense of self-belief and self-importance a little bit. And because of that, you can kind of really get in your own head. And I think that's what is really beneficial about film school is that you get to see everyone else and you get to really see that like everybody else really does think of things and thinks of ideas in different ways that you do. And I think that that's very beneficial. I
Isn't that kind of, I mean, to me, from the outside, the film industry or being a filmmaker, one of the biggest appeals seems to be that it's collaborative, that you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, and that I mean honestly that has been like the learning curve of Mirror Maze because up until this point I pretty much have done just like everything by myself because like I mean like I don't have any like massively crazy projects like it's just like kind of me messing around. But I think that when I like talked to like two of my best friends at school and just like in film school in general, I talked to them that like I wanted to make a film alongside basically all of the senior directing like concentration people. Like I wanted to make a film alongside the senior theses. I told them that I didn't necessarily thought I felt confident enough to direct this by myself because I had never like directed any person before. Like I had when I was in high school, I had to like coach people in like when I was on speech team, I had to like coach people, but that's not the same as directing. And anything that I did, like I did this I made this project that was like a tribute to like an album that I really, really loved on its 10th anniversary. But like that was just me directing all of it and putting all of it together. And then I had my friend Lainey film it basically. And then I did all of it myself. So I didn't really feel confident in directing other people. It was very nerve-wracking. But also at the same time, I like to think that I have an understanding of the areas of my abilities that are weaker. Because when I decided that I wanted to make Mirame, I asked like one of my absolute best friends like at Temple in film, Lainey Mackin, because I had seen how Lainey puts together projects and I had worked with Lainey before. I worked with Lainey on that little like tribute project that I made. And Lainey just has such a great eye for shots. They're not a director, like they don't want to be a director of photography, but they just think about things in a way that I do not.
Mhm.
And I remember working on Lainey with that little like tribute project, and they would say stuff like, "Oh, why don't you try like what if we did this? What if we did that?" And it was just stuff that I never would have thought of in a million years, which is why I was like, Lainey, I really, really want you to I would really, really love if you worked on this with me.
I would like you to tell us where people can see what, any of your work, whether it's, your animation, your film work, your art. What's the best way to find Anna on the internet?
I would say there are three Instagrams that you could follow. One is just my personal Instagram, which is just Anna_Polacek. Two, Skyline Orange, which is where I put all of my art. Three is just at Mirame Short Film, which is just the Mirame Instagram, which I have put blood, sweat, and tears into crafting the aesthetic for that Instagram. I have spent many an hour on Canva making those infographics. And then if you want to see just specifically videos, I would say on YouTube, they have like almost like Twitter user handles on YouTube now. This is like semantics that I don't think you guys care too much about. But if you look up Skyline X Orange, you'll be able to find it. It's under the name Anna Czech, but Czech is spelled Chek.
Right. And the Anna Polacek you look for on Instagram is Anna, ANNAPOLACEK.
Yeah, and but you got to put the underscore in there because there's another Anna Polacek that also went to film school that
Of
lives
course.
in California that has that username because there's at
That's
least 4
crazy.
Anna Polaceks on the in the United
Well,
States.
so although you haven't listened to a ton of episodes,
Mhm.
one of the things that we like to do is, as I've told you for years now, Chris and I are list guys. We're kind of
Mhm.
the John Cusack character from High Fidelity together. So one of the things that we're going to go into very soon is your thoughts for a theme for a kind of a mini playlist, and we're going to suggest some songs. I want to hear what songs you might suggest. However, I've kind of been monopolizing things. I don't know if Chris has any questions that he might want to ask you, seeing as it's been 19 years since he saw you.
Yeah. I'm going to move a little bit away from the film stuff because I only understood about every third word that you said because there's a lot of film lingo, which is cool. I did learn a lot, stuff I'll have to look up. I'm more interested in, because I used to live outside of Philly. So I know I heard about the gunshots and the dogs outside your window. What's your overall take on Philly and what are some of your favorite things about the city?
I have grown to love Philadelphia a lot. I basically spent the past 4 years saying I can't wait until I can leave and move back to Chicago. Like I want to move to Chicago. I want to not be here. And now that I am at kind of the end of college, I'm like, oh God, what if I stayed another year in Philly? I feel like I really didn't learn to love Philadelphia until honestly my junior year, which is when I really started. I I only lived in the dorms for, I mean, like a semester and a half because of COVID. I went home a month after my first semester freshman year because they said that they would give us a full refund on housing if you left. And I was like, well, all of classes are online. Why would we spend so much? Why would we spend all that money if I'm not like going to class? So then I only after that I came back second semester. So really I was only in the dorms for a semester and then a month. And then after that I lived off campus and I live off campus now. I have lived in 2 apartments since then. Technically the apartment I live in now, I would say spatially is better, but we've been having some issues with it. So um I don't know if my dad mentioned anything. We were currently dealing with a gas leak, so
There's a small gas leak that they had
that
to
just
deal
was
with.
happening for like 3 months, like no big deal.
But Anna has a roommate, actually two roommates, although one is abroad right now. But they did a good job of dealing with that stuff, and anybody who went to college and lived off campus at any point knows that you got to deal with landlords that aren't necessarily the most helpful,
Yeah.
and they did a real nice
Um,
job.
And
yeah, and Sophie,
cars that are set on fire right behind you.
Right,
yeah.
right. That was our
Um,
experience.
yeah, Sophie was the one that drafted and sent the email. And she asked me to look over it and then sent it to you before like we sent it. And I was reading it and I was like, she's just a much more thorough person than I am. My email would not have been as like thorough and like
She covered a lot of
covering.
ground. Yes.
Yes, she did. She is like super awesome for that.
So
But
let's talk a little bit. So Temple is located in North Philadelphia.
yeah, at
And
North Central, it's everyone says a lot of like a lot of the suburban kids love to be like, yeah, it's in North Philly, and it's like, well, there's a lot more North Philly. It's Temple is not in the worst area of North Philly. It's not a video podcast, so you didn't see me doing air quotes, but
there are air quotes there.
yes, but it's definitely it's almost hard to say. It's very strange because this is like the only college experience that I've ever known. So to me, it's very normal. I don't realize how there are certain things that might not be normal to other college students until I go home and start talking to my friends like who are all visiting home in Thanksgiving. I visited one of my best friends, Julia Valera. She went to Mizzou. And I visited Mizzou my like sophomore year, I think. I flew out and visited her and I was like, "Oh, wow, this is really different." And I used to hear like posts from like Penn and Drexel students being like, "Oh, if you go to Temple's campus, you're gonna get shot in the head immediately." And I was like, "What the hell are you guys talking about?" And then I looked at a picture of I've never stepped foot on Penn or Drexel's campus, but I looked at pictures from Penn and Drexel's campuses, and I was like, "Oh wow, you guys are living a very different experience than I am living in." Um, one of my best friends, Erica, says that like, oh, crime in Philly is personal. So like if you just mind your own business, like you're fine. And I like believe that. If you just kind of keep your head down and you don't like if you're not bothering anyone, like you're fine. It's a city. You just have to like be aware of your surroundings. I don't think it's that bad, but it's like I do have stories that when I tell people and in the tone that I tell people, they're like, "Oh my God, you live there?" And it's like, "Yeah, I do." The craziest one, and this one actually was like this one had I think a little bit more of a lasting impact on me. But I was walking home from the gym one night, which is only like a block and a half away from where my apartment is. And I was standing about like kitty corner to my apartment, like diagonally from it. And literally 600 feet away from me, like 6 gunshots ran out, and these kids that were shooting like started running down towards me. And I like freaked out. I was like, oh my God. And I had to run and sprint and run into my apartment. And like I have never put in the code to get into my apartment faster. And then for like the rest of the night, helicopters, like there was searchlights like on my apartment, like for a good long while. And after that, it was so funny. I went to a concert with a friend of mine who had come up and visited me. And I remember apologizing, being like, I don't know, I'm having like so many panic attacks recently. Like, I don't know why. And it's like, oh, well, maybe it has something
It
to
could be
do
the
with what
gunshots.
just happened. Um, so that's probably the worst experience that I've had. And if I'm being completely honest, I was not involved in the incident. I know people that have had worse than that, but that's like one out of however many days that I've lived here. So it's like,
And what would you say if you had to talk about the positive things about, what you've gotten from being in Philadelphia versus, Joliet, Illinois, which is pretty much all you know, other than, vacations or short trips to other places.
I've worked in the city of Chicago before.
That's true. You've done your time in Chicago too, but just in
Um,
comparison, what would you say is do you appreciate about the city?
Chicago is the number one city in my heart, always and forever. So I don't want this to sound like a diss to Chicago, but obviously Philly's on the East Coast. Everything is very close together. I like Philly is much smaller than Chicago. I think that you really like if you live in Chicago, you don't have to have a car, but you definitely are benefited a little bit if you had a car. If you're trying to get from like if there's someone like in South Loop and you live like all the way in Uptown, like having a car would be kind of nice. Whereas Philly, like it's a 2 mile walk from my apartment to Center City. That's not bad. I can do that in like
Right.
30 minutes. So like I mean, I take the subway all the time, but honestly, I walk a lot in Philly because everything is just so close together. And actually, the last time I came home for winter break, it was the first time ever that I was like annoyed that I had to get in my car and drive somewhere every single time. I was like I have to drive to go to like a coffee shop. Like I can't just walk like half a mile to go and like get coffee. Also, there's no
Which,
bagel places in Joliet anymore, and that's awful.
which is hilarious though, because before you left for college, one of your favorite things to do was drive. Like driving was everything, and
And I
that's
and I
suburban, right? I mean, that's just being
yeah,
in suburban Midwest.
I still do miss it a lot. Like there are times where I really would like to have just like go out and drive again, but it's more so like I like driving when it's something that like I want to go and do as
Yeah.
opposed to you have to drive to every single thing. You have to drive to every single place because there's just no like it's a 2 mile walk to get to Center City and it's a mile and a half to get to the in Joliet, it's a mile and a half just to get to the gym. Whereas in
Right.
Philly, I live like a block away from it.
Yeah. Well, let's turn our attention to your thought for a playlist theme. You texted us a few days back with an idea, or at least a general idea, about a playlist. What is it that you wanted to do or talk about in terms of songs you might recommend along a theme?
Well, the playlist idea, so I had given the playlist idea of what songs would you do for like a coming of age movie or like putting together a playlist basically for a film, like what you would score a film with. And then you gave the idea of like what were your favorite songs from that you know from movies. So I put together then I know you said like 3 or 5 songs. I put together 3 different lists of different
That's my
topics
girl.
for different kind because I was thinking about it and I was like, well, I listen to a lot of movie soundtracks too, like just like completely instrumental. So I was like, I feel like I gotta include that too, but that's completely different than like, oh, what do you think are the best needle drops in movies? So I put together 3 different lists covering those 3 different
Yeah,
categories.
Chris is like, yeah, now I know the genetics are clear. Multiple lists.
and backups and alternatives and 20 when you're supposed
Runners
to come
up.
up with 5.
Oh, well, so for the first one, which is the one I think closest into your idea, like what you had gotten back to me with like this is the idea that you wanted to sort of go with. Like the needle drop version of the playlist. The first song I have is Anthems for a 17-Year-Old Girl by the Broken Social Scene, which is currently probably the band I listen the most to. It's from their You Forgot It in People album, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. And that's in Scott Pilgrim. It's probably one of like that's not the song I think of when I think of the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. And I, in fact, forget that that's like where I actually first heard that song. But I love it. It's one of my favorite songs ever. The next one is Let Her Dance by the Bobby Fuller Four from Fantastic Mr. Fox. That's the song that plays at the end. So good. The next one is actually not from a movie. It's from a TV show, but I still visual media, so I counted it. And that's Glass, Concrete, and Stone by David Byrne, which played in The Bear,
Oh yeah,
which I like. The Bear soundtrack is really, really good. They did a
it
really
really
great
is.
job with that. Next one is Les Fleurs by Minnie Riperton, which plays at the end of Us. I think that that was like a really good one. And then for the last one from this playlist, from this list, Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometimes, but specifically the Corgis version from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. They play two different versions of that song, one by Beck and one by the Corgis, but I like the one by the Corgis better.
What part of Scott Pilgrim is that song, the one you mentioned? I'm having trouble
I
placing it.
I do too. I'm pretty positive it's like when he, I think it's when he goes on the date with Ramona for the first
Okay,
time.
got you.
Um, the next playlist I'd come up with was songs that were sung in movies and like the characters around are hearing that song because that's
Oh,
like not
cool.
a needle drop, but like the characters are listening to this. Number one is La Resistance from the South Park movie. So good. It's my favorite one. Everyone says blame Canada, but I think La Resistance is like the best one. Um, Next one is Sugar High, but specifically the version that Renee Zellweger sings in Empire Records. That version is not available online, which is crazy because I've listened to the normal version and it's not as good without Renee Zellweger
Oh,
singing
that's
in it.
such a great part of that movie too.
And then the last one is embarrassingly also from Scott Pilgrim, and that's when Brie Larson sings the song Black Sheep, which is the one that everyone thinks of when they think of that movie. That song is so good. And that's it for that playlist. And then the last one, because I felt like I couldn't not include these as well, even though I know at least my dad is not a movie soundtrack listener.
You're talking about like scores, right? Like
Yeah,
original
I
scores.
listen
But
to a
yes,
lot of
exactly.
scores. For this version, there's only 3 songs. The number one is The Dragon Boy by Joe Hisaishi from Spirited Away. That's my favorite song from Spirited Away. It's super good. This track that's just called Kaneda from the movie Akira. That's like the first song that they play. It's so good. I listen to it all the time. And then the last one is a song called Prophecies by Philip Glass, which is in Koyaanisqatsi, which is like, it's a very, very haunting song. I really love it.
That's again, I can't tell you how proud I am at this moment. I this what you
I'm
just did is why when Chris talked about a podcast, I thought, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, I'm just overwhelmed and embarrassed by my list.
Yeah, I think Chris and I took a different approach, and I part of it was just miscommunication because I do like the idea of a coming of age playlist. That's going to happen in a future episode, and we will give you credit when the time comes. I promise.
Thank you. And I will force you guys to read off my list of what of the songs that I would have put on
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. We will do that. You'll be a special guest for that purpose. So Chris and I both came up with some songs. I'm not sure we took the exact same approach. I feel like this is one maybe we could alternate. D, what do you think?
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah,
why
that way I
don't
don't have to list all 5 of my embarrassing choices at the same time.
well, why don't you list your first embarrassing choice and then we'll go from there.
All right, I tried to do a little bit of what we usually do in our episodes, which is then and now. So I tried to do a little bit of older stuff and things that I remember when I was younger. We didn't have such great movies like Spirited Away and otherwise, but we did have the animated movie in 1981 called Heavy Metal, much more of an adult animated movie. And one of my favorite songs, and it definitely represents what I listened to back when we were roommates, Tom, is Heavy Metal by Sammy Hagar. Just
Yep.
a classic, like headbanging, no thoughts, just heavy metal noise. And he repeats that over and over again. So yeah, that's my first choice, 1981.
So my I didn't go then and now at all. And what I ended up doing, frankly, is picking songs that I felt really um, represented a specific film. And as I went through my own library and what soundtracks I had, I basically decided to look at films that, some of them are critically acclaimed, but I don't think any of them were huge hits or necessarily films that people go back to now. So I thought it was kind of a good way to recommend the film and the song. So the first one I have is the song Ellis Unit One. That's from Dead Man Walking, which was a 1995 film. The song's by Steve Earle. The movie itself was really, I think, critically acclaimed, and I think Sean Penn might have won an Oscar for it, but I know he was nominated, as maybe was Susan Sarandon. They both starred in that movie. It was written and directed by Tim Robbins. It's about Sister Helen Prejean, who was a death penalty. Uh, uh, I'm not sure the right word to use, but she tried to focus the country's attention on the death penalty to try to get rid of it. And Sean Penn plays a person sentenced to death, and you follow him throughout this movie up until the point where he's executed. It's really powerful. It's really sad. But I think that Steve Earle just hit it right on the head with that song, Ellis Unit One. And Ellis Unit One is the unit where they would put the people that were sentenced to death in that particular prison. And it is a haunting song and really captures the whole movie in just, a 3 minute version of the song.
Yeah, that would have been my first choice. And I was pissed at you when I saw it, but
What's new?
whatever. Happens all the time.
Whatever.
So I'm sticking with my then, going a little bit out of order, and we try not to repeat, even though I recommended this movie as one of my then recommendation, but it's easily one of the most classic songs from a movie, I think, 1980s movie especially. And the scene itself is great. I think it's where Nicolas Cage's character is all bummed out, and but it's A Million Miles Away by the Plimsouls from the Valley Girl, or from Valley Girl. So 1983. I won't rehash the movie. It's one of my favorites. But that song is just a great. It's the scene itself is awesome, and the song itself is great. And the Plimsouls, I think, are pretty much a one-hit wonder, if they're even that. But so yeah, 1983's A Million Miles Away.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great one, and it is definitely of that movie for sure.
Oh yeah.
My next song to recommend is called Arrive. It's by a band called the Incoherents from a movie called The Incoherents. Now, I don't think the Incoherents were a band before this film was made, but they are legitimate musicians. And this movie from 2020, I don't think very many people have seen it. I came across it completely by accident, but it's basically about a bunch of middle-aged guys who used to be almost a big deal in the New York punk scene in like I want to say late 80s, but mainly 90s. And they almost made it. And then their lead singer, kind of the motivating force behind the band, quit. And they all kind of fell apart. So this is the getting the band back together movie. And I don't know why it appeals to me to hear about these people that used to be a big deal and want to get back together and create new art, but it does. And this song Arrive just kind of captures the soul of that band as they've gotten older. It's not quite the same music they played, and you get flashbacks of them playing back in the 90s and what have you. But it's a great movie that I don't think many people know about, and it's really a fun song. So what's your next one?
All right, so I'm sort of going in order. So year-wise, and this one's an obvious choice, but I don't care. Has some personal attention, or sorry, personal resonance with me. So You've Got a Friend in Me from Toy Story by Randy
Yes.
Newman. Just a great song. That was easily the first like kids movie. I've seen just about every kids movie back in the day, but that was one of the first ones that just struck me. I didn't want to go see it. I don't remember why, but when I did, I walked away just amazed at what a great movie of bridging both kids' interest and parents' interest. It really got me into Randy Newman, so I went back and explored a lot of his earlier material. And uh, while a lot of his stuff sounds the same because of his voice, it's so unique. I was stuck on the fact that, Short People was a big song when we were younger, and not exactly the most PC thing, but it's funny. But he's written such, I mean, some of his previous albums are great. I would strongly encourage folks to listen to his earlier stuff. And then he's done other great movies, and Toy Story 2 is another great song. So it's a very, very obvious choice, and I don't like making those, but it's easily one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, my parents were huge Randy Newman fans. So I had Sail Away, they had, the albums, the LPs. So I was listening to that stuff when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. And it's the kind of music, including Short People, that you listen to it then and, it's kind of catchy and he's got an interesting voice. And then you listen to it later and you realize he's talking about things that you had no concept of at the time. He is, I can't, it's hard to say he's underappreciated because everybody knows who Randy Newman is, but he is truly, he's as important, I think, as Dylan is in American music, as far as I'm concerned. My third song goes back. This is a then suggestion for sure. It's the song "Everybody Knows" by Concrete Blonde from 1990's "Pump Up the Volume." That "Pump Up the Volume" is one of those 90s, coming of age movies that I've always been a sucker for and continue to be a sucker for. Just a great movie about, and I'm completely spacing on the actor. Christian Slater plays a kid who moves into a like suburban town. It looks like it's outside of LA or maybe Arizona or something like that. But it's basically about this guy who's a rebel but doesn't look like it, and he has a pirate radio station that he fires up when he moves to this new town, and it ends up creating all kinds of havoc, and all the kids in the high school start to rebel and do crazy things, and it's really a fun movie, and I feel like that song captures the feeling of that movie every time he turns on the microphone down in his basement and starts to broadcast.
Nice choice. Another one I don't know.
Really? I'm surprised. I would have thought that movie, you got to watch that movie. I think you can find that streaming.
All right. Now that Anna's opened up the window for me a little bit, so I am changing something for my list.
Yes.
Since she said the TV is in play. So I'm going to go with one so the reason this was so hard for me is, other than songs like You Got a Friend in Me, which were hits and everything else, I didn't often go out and buy soundtracks because it was so spotty. Like the chances that you'd have a whole album that you liked was very small. I felt like. So we talked about, various compilations, tributes to other artists. You can discover new stuff, but I find with soundtracks, oftentimes, I don't know, you just buy it for one or two songs you like.
Yeah.
So I didn't remember buying a lot. So as I was trying to research this and coming up with just really struggling with what ones I was going to include, I came across a reference to the movie Elizabethtown. And I know I didn't see it, but I distinctly remember buying the soundtrack, and I went back and I looked. They actually issued two volumes of soundtracks for that movie. I don't know a whole lot about the movie, but I went back and looked, and unfortunately on YouTube Music, most of the songs are grayed out. But I did find the one that I remember liking so much, and it was Long Ride Home by Patty Griffin. Shockingly, it's a very sad song. It's about a funeral and slow, but it was one of the first songs that started getting me a little bit more into expanding my horizons and listening to women singers. And Patty Griffin was one of the first in that vein. And
She's
this song,
outstanding.
yeah. And so this is from 2002, so 20 years ago, but still now. And I'll have a surprise for you for my last choice, which is the one that'll go on the playlist.
All right. Well, my second to last choice is from the film I'm Not There, which was this weird biography of Bob Dylan, where at least 5 different people played Bob Dylan at different stages of his life. And it was very surreal. The entire movie is very surreal. It came out in 2007. And I mean, they had one of the actors who played him in the film was a woman. And it's hard to follow. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, but I like it better than a lot of kind of biopics you see that are just straightforward narrative stories. I didn't write down the name of the director of this one, but it's just really, really interesting how he tries to find the essence of Bob Dylan without locking it into this one guy's going to play this musician from start to finish, that kind of thing. But the song from the soundtrack, and they had people cover Bob Dylan songs throughout the soundtrack. It's called the song is Going to Acapulco, but it's performed by Calexico, which is a band I know you're familiar with. I know you like them a lot, and it's a very, very interesting version of that song, and I do feel it captures this kind of changeable feeling you have when you watch this movie, how Bob Dylan kind of changed his character and his persona as he went through his life and his career. And this song for some reason captures that, even though I don't necessarily think the lyrics address it at all. But it's also just a cool song to listen to, and it's my favorite song from that soundtrack.
I remember being a kid and going through our iTunes library, and there was like 8 different singles, I guess, that were bought from from that movie's soundtrack. And I remember being like 7 years old and being like, what is this? Why are there so many of these albums? Like, it just duplicated itself so many times on our iTunes library, and it just like would not get like my like iPod, like it wouldn't get off of my iPod. I was like, what is this?
It's funny because it's still that way. I don't know why, because I think I purchased the album, and at that point I do think I purchased it. It was before I had Apple Music, but it did come through as separate entries as opposed to all being listed under
7 different singles.
It still looks that way. It's still exactly the same way.
That's my only familiarity with that movie.
It is a great soundtrack. It really is a good soundtrack. There's a lot of different versions of Dylan's songs. He's somebody that's cool to listen to people cover because everybody has their own take on it.
All right. And now for our 5th and final choice. And this is the one that'll go on the playlist on the various services, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Go check them out. They're also, you can find them on the website. And again, thank you for opening up TV to me, because I wanted to put this one in. But this one highlights very different than back in the day. You'd have to buy soundtracks. I remember this song coming across in this pretty crappy series I was watching called Shooter, with Ryan Felipe, I think is him, the actor. And song came across in one of the scenes, and I was like, that's a great song. So I looked to my phone to tell me what the title was. And it was What Went Down by Foals. I know it's an anthem-like song, but it became one of my favorite songs ever. I would strongly encourage you to check out the video for it. It's the most stressful video I've ever watched in my life. It's just, I've shared it with people and they're like, dude, that gave me like a mini heart attack. It's just a really great song. We talk about this all the time. It's one of those songs that I love to envision myself singing. It just it rocks. It's just a fantastic, like I said, it's a rock anthem. I haven't got as much into their other stuff. This one seems to have been made just for me. So I love that song, and it was on a TV show, so I'm counting it as being a soundtrack song.
The door was opened.
The door was opened.
All right. So my 5th and final pick, which is the one that, along with What Went Down, will go on our season 2 playlist, is It Ain't Fair, from a 2017 movie called Detroit. This is another movie that I think got some critical acclaim, but I don't think a lot of people saw it. The song is by The Roots, featuring a rapper called Bilal. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Detroit is about the 1967 Detroit riots. And it follows a musical group, basically a Motown kind of singing group. None of them played instruments that I recall, at least not from the film. But they were, just kind of that classic Motown harmonizing sound. They sound really great in the movie. I believe it was an actual group, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the group itself. This song captures that kind of Motown feel that they're trying to express in the movie as part of the time period, but also has, like, in the breaks, it raps, and it's much more modern, and it's just the way that they engineered and put it together. It's just a fantastic song. And I after I watched the movie, I downloaded that song. I didn't really download anything else from the soundtrack, but I still listen to that song frequently. I think it's really cool, really upbeat, but it also captures kind of both the violence and the fear of violence that runs throughout that movie, because it's basically about police who break into a hotel and just basically murder people that didn't have anything to do with any of the crime that they were that they were being alleged of perpetrating. So it captures all of that somehow, and it's really it's a cool song to listen to. So that's It Ain't Fair by the Roots from 2017 soundtrack, Detroit.
You know, I love to pick on you because I stumble over my words. It's hilarious that the lawyer on the show was stumbling over how to describe that crime.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Like, and part of it is because there really was no crime. They were just, the
right.
cops were just breaking into places, and basically they were murdering black people is what they were doing. And it's horrifying. The movie's scary as hell.
And I'm not laughing at that. I'm just making fun of you.
No, how dare you? So anyway, that's so those will be our two playlist recommendations. Will be What Went Down and It Ain't Fair, which kind of sound like they go hand in hand, actually. And listeners will be able to find those songs on our Third Song In Season 2 playlist, which is, Chris said, is in all kinds of music streaming services. And what's your reaction to our choices, Anna?
I would say, at least my reaction to your choices, Dad, is thought in my head, wow, you watch a lot of movies that I have just never even heard of before.
I was just telling
welcome to my world. Just like, dude, what is he?
That's like every time I check Letterboxd, I'm like, why did you watch this? Where did you find this?
Did you see my March Letterboxd list for this year? I don't know how it happened, other than I had COVID for a weekend and was stuck by myself. I've watched like 15 movies this month.
Yeah.
I don't know even I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, this is a lot. And they're all crazy too.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
And like a lot of these, you said you really liked Past Lives, didn't you?
Yeah, loved it. Loved it. That movie is
like, why did you watch Morbius? Why did you rewatch The Social Network?
Those are excellent questions.
Sorry, my Prada's at the cleaners along with my t-shirts and my fuck you flip-flops.
Yeah, I hadn't seen Social Network in a while, and I was like, you know what, I would, because what's his name wrote that movie, Sorkin, and I was thinking about some other Aaron Sorkin thing. And you know what, I'm going to rewatch Social Network because I think I only watched it once. I have no explanation for watching Morbius, and I would recommend that if you think about watching that, you should go out and take a walk because it's horrible. But
can I tell you the 2 movies that I have watched in March? Well, 2.5. There's a movie I haven't logged that I haven't finished yet.
Sure.
The first movie was the Mean Girls musical, which I did not like too much.
Me either.
I liked it more than you did. Actually, I think you rated it higher than I did, but I think that there was more. I think I recognize that there was some more good in it than you did, but overall it's very bad. I did not like it too much. And then the Monster High doll movie, Why Do Ghouls Fall in Love, which I rated 5 stars. It was very good. And I watched 3/4 of Top Gun.
The new one?
Yes. And when I was thinking about movie songs, and no, not the new one, the old one.
Oh, the old one.
Because my roommate Sophie loves Top Gun. When I was thinking about movie soundtracks, all I could think of was how many times they played Danger Zone in that movie. They play it like 7 times.
Although You Lost That Love and Feeling has a place, I think, near and dear to Chris and my heart, because we used to sing that at the fraternity house when we were at parties.
I'm not happy. I'm going to have Highway to the Danger Zone in my head all damn day now.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Every time the scene changed, I swear they started playing it again.
That's true, actually.
Kenny Loggins.
So yeah, my number one recommendation is Anthems for a 17-Year-Old Girl by the Broken Social Scene. Such a good song. Though I
We
played
will.
it for my friend Erica, and she said, "Turn that off. What is that?"
Let me ask you this. I think you know that when for lots of our recommendations, we rate things 5 out of 5 egg burritos with sour cream. Would you rate that 5 out of 5?
Personal rating, 5 out of 5. More objective rating. I can recognize that it's. I don't think honestly that I don't think you would like the song as a whole very much. It's very chanty and it's very drony. And so if you're a fan of chanting and droning, then yeah, 5 out of 5. Five out
Excellent.
of
Well,
five.
that means you're making our recommendations page on the website. So
Yep, you're on.
Yay.
Tom loves my droney recommendations.
that's right. That's right.
Okay, this brings us to our favorite part of the episode, the one where we acknowledge our mistakes, omissions, mumblings, stumblings, all that fun stuff. As it turns out, I have no mess ups this week. Well, I guess mess ups is a relative term, but Tom, I think you are the main participant in this week's post facto.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake.
It seems that way. It also seems like it's almost always that way. I had two things I wanted to point out, minor things, although one of them major enough. When I was talking about the movie Big Night and talking about how I felt like it triggered the Food Network and food porn films and what have you, the second part may be true. I think the success of Big Night critically allowed for other directors to make movies that were about food and talked about food preparation or showed it anyway ad infinitum. But actually, the Food Network itself was founded in 1993, which was 3 years before that movie came out. So maybe Big Night was a reaction to Food Network or the early success of Food Network. That I don't know. I do know that it was not the other way around, which is what I kind of alluded to earlier. And then my other post facto was I mentioned Primanti's. Primanti Brothers Sandwich Shop in Pittsburgh is a shrine, one of my favorite shrines in the city of Pittsburgh. I did say that it originated in the Garment District in Pittsburgh, which I don't even think is a thing in Pittsburgh. They refer to it as the Strip District. And it was one of those areas where they're factory workers and they did shift work. So Primanti's would be open at 3 a.m. or they'd close for a while and then open when the shifts ended, the midnight shift ended, what have you. So Primanti's opened in 1933 in the Strip District, not the Garment District. So thank you very much, Anna, for being only our third guest on this podcast. I will say that you are the guest we've had so far that I love the most.
Oh, thanks.
But I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your input.
Yeah, and good luck on your senior project, and I look forward to seeing your movie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about myself, so this was fun. Thank you for having me before either of my brothers. If Jake was on this podcast before me, I would have thrown a fit. So I'm happy that I could be here. This was very, very fun, and I got to talk about songs that I like, so that was exciting.
And that's pretty much it for this episode of Third Song In. You can email us at thirdsongin@gmail.com. Please send us your comments, your questions. If you've got recommendations for themes for the episodes or responses to our playlists, please let us know. We would ask that you follow us on whatever pod-catching application you use to listen to the podcast. Please rate and review us. You can find our playlists, Third Song In Season 1 and Third Song In Season 2. Those are both of those playlists are on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, YouTube Music. The podcast episodes itself you can find not only on Spotify and Apple, etc. You can also find us on our website, which is www.thirdsonginpodcast.com. You can listen to the episodes through that website. You can also find our 5 out of 5 recommendations. You can find what we call an episode spotlight, where we tend to put on some video or audio that relates to things we talked about during the episode. There's also a blog page now, and we're basically on a weekly basis. We're releasing essays and blogs written either by Chris or myself. I'd love to have you subscribe to that and read those and give us your feedback on that as well. Look for those blog entries. We're trying to drop those every Thursday while we try to drop the episodes themselves on Mondays. Would very much like to thank my wonderful daughter, Anna. Make sure you look for her work, both her art and her new film, at Skyline Orange on Instagram, at Miramay Short Film on Instagram. You can find Anna Chek, ANNACHEK, or at Skyline Orange on YouTube. You'll find videos of animations and other work she's done both for school, before school, and just as kind of projects she does at 3 a.m, I think. But it was awesome having her on the episode, and we're going to invite her back soon. And then finally, this is the 9th episode of season 2. Next episode will be our season finale, and we're very excited because we have another special guest, an internationally renowned musician, blues performer, harmonica player. His name is Joe Falisco, and we're very much looking forward to having him. So make sure you tune in for Third Song In next week. So that's it. This has been Third Song In with Chris and Tom. Thank you for listening. But I love you.
Love you too. I will.
I was talking to Chris.
Oh.